Welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam Smith, and today we head back into Primal The Awakening from Reggie Games. But this time, we're checking out the Primal challenges for 2024. These are going to be one-shot challenges released every month, with this one being the very first one for September. These Primal challenges releasing on a monthly basis will give the community something to strive for, and also for those of you that have already dug into the campaign and lots of expedition mode plays, this might be right up your alley to test to see just how great you are at the game. Each of the challenges will be released inside of a PDF from Reggie Games. I'll have a link to this first one in the pinned comment and video description. You'll notice in the PDF for the challenge there is a ranking system which starts at Rookie getting 50 points, Expert at 65 points, Prime Hunter 80 points, Commander 90 points, Beastmaster 110 points, and Dragon Slayer at 130 points. Now the challenge will have differences in terms of how many points you can acquire, all based on how tough you make the challenge. So you can set the challenge more at a medium difficulty or more on the lighter side if you wish, but your cap in terms of how many points you can get will be limited. Whereas if you go all in and put all nightmare components in that it's calling for, you have the opportunity to go all the way up to that Dragon Slayer ranking at 130 points. So whether you want to complete the challenges on your own, keeping the score to yourself, or you want to share them with a group of friends to compare to see who's the best at a particular challenge, you have options, and you can even start to share those scores out to the community as well. We'll definitely be talking about it inside the Discord and the Facebook group, so if you want to compare scores against individuals in the Rolling Solo board game community, that would be absolutely awesome. You can always post your scores in the comments section of this video as well as the setup that you used in order to get the points that you did. Now, most of you probably already opened up the PDF by this point, so inside of it you can see the aggression level of the monster, the special rules for the monster, how to set up, and the different allotments of points you can get from your setup, the ranking chart, as well as the actual setup for the board itself, which I've got all ready to go right here. So before I go ahead with my first attempt, I'll go over everything inside the PDF at a high level. So the first thing is Kharja that we're going up against right now, and Kharja's made of flesh and fire. The flames that rise in its wake twist like damned souls. Do not lose yourself in its hell. The aggression level for the monster is set at level 1, but players can choose whether or not they want to add the Nightmare variant of the monster, which essentially means adding the Nightmare variant stance cards and any number of behavior cards, but this choice, as I talked about before, affects the total score you can get when you win, if you win. Now let's go over the special rules for this challenge. The first one is that the fight is surrounded by rivers of lava. As you can clearly see, the heat is at your backs, pushing you against the monster. It tells us to remove the Keep Your Distance objective card from the game, which is shown right here. This is not in play. The air is also growing thinner. You're breathing ash and steam, so at the start of every round, each player has to discard cards equal to the current round number from the top of their deck. At the bottom of the challenge PDF, you'll see a challenge score section. It says, in case of victory, calculate your challenge score by starting with 70 points and then applying the modifiers which are listed underneath. The first one is a plus 20 points if you complete the challenge on your first try, plus 10 points if you use the Nightmare variant stance cards instead of the regular ones, plus 10 points for each Nightmare behavior card you used, minus 5 points each time a player has been KO'd, and minus 5 points for each time a player consumed an Alamore potion. Now for my setup, I'm not using any of the Nightmare components, which means I'm capped in terms of how many points I could potentially get off this challenge, but that's okay, as I want to show you this challenge in action without being decimated. I'll leave that Nightmare challenge for you to try on your own, and I'll of course be doing that off camera, but for this play, I'm going to focus on going after the 70 points for a victory, and then it states I would get minus 5 points, of course, for every time one of my characters gets KO'd. I'll be trying to avoid that. Minus 5 points for every time I'm consuming one of those potions, basically a health potion. So again, I'll be trying not to do that. And the other one is that I get 20 points on top of the 70. So at the highest amount, I can get 90 points if I complete this challenge on my first try. As I mentioned prior, there are 6 different ranks: Rookie, Expert, Prime Hunter, Commander, Beastmaster, and Dragon Slayer. A total of 90 points, which is my maximum for this challenge based on this setup for the playthrough here, will be Commander at 90 points. That's the highest one I can get up to, which is the 3rd highest one. You might want to push for the Beastmaster is the 2nd highest, or even the top place, Dragon Slayer at number 1. Let's go ahead and wrap up the last steps to setup, and then we'll dive right into gameplay. This is the stance card for Kharja, and it's at stance 1, toughness is 5, and based on the 2 characters I'm controlling, toughness value will be at 10, as it's times 2 for 2 characters. So toughness 10, meaning we need 10 damage to get 1 wound, moving that marker on the track down 1 position. We need to get 10 wounds in order to take this creature down. Taking a look at the stance card here at the very front sector, we cannot attack this thing. We can only attack it in stance 1 from the flank and from the rear, not from the front. And you can tell it's the front from that little line right there at the very bottom. So no matter how this monster changes its orientation on the battle board, we're going to take a look at where it's facing based on the miniature and the lines on the miniature to know where its front is. And that's the sector we currently cannot attack. There are 2 start of round effects. One is only going to trigger for round number 1, which is going to be the round we're going to be going into in just a moment. So I'll deal with this in a second, but essentially each player is going to exhaust a potion card, basically making a potion we brought into the equation useless for the entire fight. And then this one over here says at the start of the round, this is the peril card, discard the top card of the behavior deck. If that card has a claw keyword, players in the front sector suffer damage based on the stance card. Bottom right shows 1 damage. I've gone ahead and populated the dashboard with behavior cards off the top of the deck. We got 2 for the front sector, which works out pretty nice for us because I do not want to be anywhere near the front sector as I'm trying to do damage from the flank or from the rear. So that is good for us. And this one here, Rampage icon, well, that's only going to trigger if one of the other ones trigger. My characters coming into this battle are Hellerin and Kara, and I've already chosen the aggro token to go for Hellerin, so I've already placed the first player marker here as well in advance. And I've also drawn up my starting hand for Hellerin. Here is a look at those 5 cards. And over here for Kara, I've got these 5 cards drawn up to start her hand. Start around abilities are now going to trigger, starting with the stance card. We have it at the start of round number 1. Each player exhausting a potion card, so we choose one for each character. It's a tough choice because all 3 of these potions are very interesting. This one over here, suffering damage equal to a weapon level. My weapon level is 1, which means for 1 damage, I can get a +3 damage boost until the end of a round, which is pretty awesome. This one here, suffering damage equal to your weapon level to draw 2 cards, also very handy. This one over here says to consume, choose a player in your sector to heal to. If the current attrition level is a 1 or lower, then you can actually get 4 heal instead. Now, this is the one that will actually have us remove 5 points from our total overall score if we consume it. So you might think this might be the one to go ahead and do, but then if we actually get rid of this, we might get into a situation where we are just barely on the cusp of winning and don't have enough health to pull it off, and we fail the scenario and don't even get to score in general. So maybe holding on to this just in case we have to use it to get the victory might be worth it. So maybe I'll choose one of these 2. It's a tough call, but I think I like the one that allows me to draw 2 cards versus getting some extra damage. Now on this side of the equation, I'm going to choose to hold on to this potion in case I really need it to pull out a victory at the very end. These 2 right here, I have to decide between. I have 1, discarding a card from your hand to search your deck for one of your maneuver cards or attack cards and add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. Actually, I think that might be the one to get rid of probably, although it could be nice to pull the exact card that I need based on what I'm trying to plan out. So it could be very powerful. This one here, discard a card from your hand to search your deck for a defensive card and add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. That's also very handy. So both of these very good. Maybe I'll lean towards the attack one instead. So we'll get rid of the defensive one in this case. That's been resolved, and it only is going to happen at the start of round number 1, so that will not trigger again no matter how many more rounds we go through until, of course, we change stances and see what other magical things will happen. The next one here is at the start of the round, discard the top card of the behavior deck. That would be this deck right here. If the card has claw on it, players in the front sector, which we currently are standing in, will suffer damage. Let's go ahead and pull this up and see if it says claw. It does, unfortunately. A pretty nasty hit right out of the gates. Now, in terms of total health for both my characters, Hellerin over here, 4 plus the 7 is 11 health. So with 1 damage, has 10 remaining before being KO'd. Over here, Kara on the other side has a total of 10 health. 1 damage means 9 remaining before she is KO'd. The last start around effect is going to come right from the PDF for the challenge itself. Each player discarding cards equal to the current round number from the top of their deck. For Kira on the right, we've lost Finesse. And for Halloran on the left, we've lost Fire Cascade. Both these cards going in the discard pile. So as you can see, as the game continues on round by round, the discarding from the top of the deck is going to certainly chew through the deck much faster. And as we know, when those decks deplete, we have extra pain coming our way than normal. I'm going to retroactively change my mind on the potion I chose to exhaust for Halloran. I'm going to choose instead to actually get rid of the one that has me taking a damage in order to draw 2 cards and instead keep the one that does damage. I think drawing more cards in this situation is not going to be a great thing. So we're going to go ahead and keep this one right here. At this point, both my characters can consume a potion if they wish. I'm choosing not to at this point in time. We'll continue on to the monster upkeep. At this point, we do a behavior refresh if we had to, but we're in the first round, so we skip right past it. But we do need to place struggle tokens on the stance card per the number of characters in play, which is 2. So 2 struggle on the stance. And it's worth mentioning you do not have to place struggle tokens on the stance card. I just do because it helps me easily keep track of them as it sticks out a little bit more there. Moving into the player turns, we start with Halloran, who begins her turn, and that's going to trigger her being in the front sector of the monster, which will trigger the behavior cards that are currently on the dashboard. This is going to be nasty because Halloran is in the front section, which triggers 2 of the behavior cards. We'll be resolving them one at a time, and there's also a rampage card in there as well, so once one of these behaviors we choose triggers, the rampage is coming right behind it. I've chosen to resolve the one on the right. It's called Ember Dash. This one says, for the duration of this turn, the active player cannot be assisted and must use only green defensive cards to generate stamina for movement. Now I've got a Rampage card coming my way. This one says, Kharja gains 1 struggle. The stance 1 states, place a damage token in the front sector, max 1 per sector. Struggle has increased from 2 to 4. From the initial setup, we had a damage sector on the north side. Now we have one on the south side. There's no inherent thing that occurs right at this point, but certain cards and behavior effects from the enemy will trigger these. Also worth mentioning that the keyword stance 1 means that this effect will only occur if we're in stance 1 of the enemy, which we currently are, so that's why the token has been placed there. Otherwise, we'd ignore that section of the behavior card. Replenish slots for the ones we just resolved. We still have 1 behavior that needs to trigger. This one is called Terrifying Gaze, and it says that Kharja is going to gain struggle tokens -1 from the number of characters. So essentially we have 2 characters, -1. So 1 struggle token will get added to this, putting it right on the cusp because it'll be 5 total. It'll be 1 away from an Unleash, which would throw damage at us. Now underneath it says the active player skips their turn unless another player discards one of their maneuver or attack cards from their hand. I've chosen to have Kara go ahead and discard 1 blue maneuver card from her hand in order to avoid losing Halloran's turn. The next portion is more situational. It says if the active player is the only player standing, they must discard either a maneuver or an attack card from their hand instead. And because there are 2 characters for me standing right now, we don't have to worry about that piece. That's going to do it for all the behavior triggers. At this point, we can now get into Halloran's turn, and she's going to choose whether she wants to move at this point. Perfect timing to get rid of this card. In order to ensure we can get some movement generated, we have to use green this time around thanks to a nasty behavior card we read earlier for Halloran's movement. So following the rules that were stated on this behavior card to use green to generate movement, I've gone ahead and done so, avoiding the threatened token. Let's start off the sequence with a blue maneuver card. This one costs no stamina, allowing me to remove a struggle because it is blue, which is awesome. Keeping it from unleashing, which would be 6. If it hits 6, it's an unleash. Otherwise, it's going to try to spend on behavior cards for enhancements and boosts. This one here allows the aggro token to come to me, but I've already got it, so no issues there. This one says you may spend a bullet to deal 3 damage. If you do, you may immediately move without paying any stamina cost. So I spent 1 bullet down here in order to pull off 3 damage on the enemy, which is a nice little hit. We need 10 in order to get a wound. I'm going to choose not to take advantage of the movement because it is a May, and I'm going to stay exactly where I am. Next, I'm going to use Gunfire. This is a red card, which will trigger a behavior card up top, so I'll place this to remind us to resolve it right after we're done here. This is going to pull the aggro token we already have. It costs nothing for stamina, and it says you may spend a bullet to increase the damage this attack does by 3. So we'll definitely go ahead and spend 1 more bullet, bringing us down to just 1 left. And this works out perfectly because my gun is a damage of 4, and this 3 on top of it is 7. 7 plus the 3 we already have here is 10, because it's your toughness value times 2 based on the number of characters. That can all be moved over to a wound. So all 10 damage will go away, and 1 wound on the enemy, our very first one. We got our first wound on the track, pushing towards a victory. We need 10 wounds to take this thing down. It does trigger this behavior card right here because we did play an attack card red. The behavior card is called Fiery Mane. It says Kharja becomes vulnerable. We'll talk about this in a second. Then it says the active player suffers damage plus X, where X is the number of counters on Kharja. This ends up working out in our favor because we get vulnerable on the monster, allowing us to get double the damage, basically timesing it by 2 the next time we make an attack on this monster, so that's pretty awesome. Then it says here the active player is going to suffer damage, which will be 1, but that plus X is not going to matter because we have no counters on Kharja currently. So Halloran's going to take a smack, and we place the vulnerable token, which is this one right here, up on the stance card. Now, typically you put it on the monster board, but I place it here just to remind myself it's there. I'm going to play another attack card into my sequence. Doesn't cost any stamina. It is going to pull the aggro token, but I already have it. It says you can spend a bullet to search your discard pile for a red and place it on top of your deck. I do have a red in my discard. There's only 2 cards in there, but one of them is a red. So it's going on top of my deck, which is awesome. So I know I got more red coming in the future. And we're going to do some damage. 4 damage. Let's go ahead and make use of that vulnerable token because the next turn here for Kara is not going to be all that great in terms of attack. So I might as well boost up the attacks here from Halloran, and maybe Kara can kind of push things over for another wound. So this is going to turn the 4 damage into 8. Not bad overall. I only have 1 card left in hand, and honestly, I'm going to put it into my sequence because it's going to give me some defense, and I need that for my attrition check in the future, so we'll slide things down and place it in. Again, it's 0 cost. I had all 0 cost stamina cards this turn, which was really nice. Onto the attrition check. I have 1 defense in my sequence to help me to block this, and we got a 3. That's bad. That means it's going to get through. The attack is going to come at me. It's for 1 damage going to Halloran. She's got 3 now. That's a rough start for her. Remember, I still have the Alamore potion, which I can potentially, once the attrition deck has a 1 in the discard pile, use it in order to heal back 4, but again, it will dock some points when I'm going to the scoring at the end of this challenge, if I actually defeat the monster. I discarded my sequence in the order they were played back in the discard pile and drawn up to my hand limit of 5. I got Fire Cascade, Long Range, Cycle of Bullets, Cannonball, and Recharging. And during my turn, I used 3 total bullets, so this should actually be right here. After a barrage of aggressive attacks, Halloran is now the target, being that she has the aggro token still. We now move over to Kara, who's going to try her best to put more damage on the monster. Kara has a couple cool starting abilities for her turn. She's got the Crystal Helm and Crystal Armor. This one allows her to look at the top 2 cards of her deck, so we'll take a peek. We can't change the order of them, though, so this red one has to be on top. Wow, we got 2 reds coming in. That is good news for the future, for sure. And then down below, if you have 3 or more cards of the same color, which I don't, I'm actually 1 away on the yellow, then you can draw 1. Now, unfortunately, Kara starts in a space with fire, and when she does start in a space with fire, she cannot, whether it's on the red side or the yellow side, she can't place anything into her sequence. So right now, when she has the opportunity to move, she probably wants to get out of there to be productive. I'm going to discard this divert card to get her moving. And again, knowing only the flanks and the rear sector are possible to be attacked, currently that's north, south, and east. And we're in the east one, so we're good. We can make attacks from right here. Unfortunately, the movement I just did triggered a behavior card, so we have to resolve this. This is known as Fire Paw. It says discard the top card of the behavior deck. If that card has Claw, the active player suffers damage and becomes threatened. And this is great news because the top card off the deck does not have the keyword Claw, so this attack is not happening. Now, there is an enhancement at the bottom of the card. Already awesome, the behavior card doesn't hurt us, but the enhancement here still gets paid even though the outcome is not a positive one for the monster. As it states in the rulebook, the outcome of the enhancement has no bearing on whether the actual struggle token is spent or not. It's always going to spend it if it has it. However, in a funny twist, when replenishing the behavior card that just triggered, we have no more behavior deck. So at this point, we shuffle the discard pile for the behavior cards, and we're also going to add a struggle. It's known as escalation. Behavior cards have all been resolved. We're not going to go back to Kira's turn. She's now in a sector based on her movement, which allows her to play sequence cards. I'm going to discard this assist card from Halloran in order to allow Kira to go ahead and draw a card. And I knew full well from my drawing of 2 cards at the beginning of Kira's turn that this is going to be a free red card in terms of stamina cost, so a nice one to have. Let's go ahead and build out our sequence. I noticed that the aggro token somehow rolled over to Kira's side of the game board, so I moved that back over to Halloran. We're going to go in with the Returning Blade. This one is 0 cost stamina, and this one's going to allow me to do an attack. The monster has 8 damage. We're throwing 3, which means we're over the toughness value of 10, so we have 1 damage remaining and we get a wound. So 3 damage on top of the 8, as I mentioned. We're going to leave 1 here. We'll take away this, and we're going to go ahead and bump up our wound track by 1. That's 2 wounds on the enemy. We need 8 more to win. I'm playing a green dodge card into my sequence. It normally costs 1 stamina, but I'm chaining it to a red card in my sequence before it, so it's going to be free. I get to draw a card. It will pull the aggro token as well. The card off the top is another red, and it's a 0. I'm going to place Piercing Strike into my sequence. Again, this one can chain to the prior one, so no stamina cost whatsoever. It says you immediately overrun the monster, so I'm going to be hopping from the east side to the west side. I'm going to have her move from here over to the opposite side. She's doing an overrun, so she gets to charge up Voltage, putting a tracker token on it. Now she's going to go through with her red attack for the Piercing Strike, and when she does, it's going to do 3 damage, and then we're going to discard the tracker token here on Voltage, adding an additional 4 damage to the attack. Not bad at all. We're back up to 8 damage on the card, and we're working our way to 6, because that's when it'll shift to stance number 2. We've got 2 more wounds to put on it to get there. We need to get some more damage generated. We're doing pretty good so far. Let's be creative and discard this card from hand called Backstab. It's a stealth card. Won't matter because the aggro token's already on her. But it says, when you overrun the monster, you may discard this card from your hand to deal 4 damage. So we're going to do that right now. That's going to put us at 11. We'll move 10 to a wound and keep 1 right here. Not bad at all. Now I have 1 card remaining in my hand, but I do not have the ability to spend it because I don't have the stamina cost I would need to get it into my sequence. It would be nice to play Echoing Blades and get another attack in there, but I'm going to keep it for another day. Now in my sequence, I have a red, green, red, so I have 1 defensive green dodge card. So hopefully we only see 1 on the attrition check. Let's see how we do. We got ourselves a 1, so we do block the damage coming from the monster against Kara. Her sequence is in her discard pile, and I've drawn up to her 5-card limit. We kept Echoing Blades, and we drew up Dancing, Shadow Step, Swing, and Lightning Strike. For those unfamiliar with this character, she has what's known as a battle dance. So basically, if you focus on your blue cards and red cards in your sequence in a row with nothing interrupting them in between, you can take advantage of additional damage at different points in the sequence. I didn't get it for this turn, but I'll be focusing on it later on for sure. Now something else I want to take advantage of is the Electric Dagger here that says when you avoid attrition damage, which I did with my defense, you can choose and discard a behavior card in play. If you do, you replenish it with the slot of the top card of the behavior deck. So we're going to take a look and see which ones are going to affect us in the near future. There are 2 behavior cards in play right now that will trigger in the near future. This one's going to trigger at the end of the round, which is coming up. So this will be the first one to trigger. Then later, the individual being in the front sector that activates, which will be Kara, is going to take the brunt of that one. So I'm actually going to have this one stay, and we'll get rid of this one. That's going to do it for end of turn. Everything is all dealt with. The monster's already facing the individual with the aggro token because both of our characters are in the same sector, and we happen to get ourselves into the front sector for the end of the round. Anyway, there is one thing I didn't do, and that is I did an overrun with Kara, and when I do that, her mastery has tracking for that overrun. Every time we do it, we place a tracker on this thing. Once we get to 2, we master. So we want to make sure that we're actually keeping track of that, so I placed a token on it. Once we get the second one, we can flip it over and get some awesome benefits. At this point, if there's any end of round effects, they would trigger right now. The major one is going to be the fire that is here, flipping from red to yellow. With 3 wounds on the monster, we're now heading into round number 2. We have some start of round effects to deal with. The first one here will not resolve from the stance card because it's only for the start of round number 1. So that's not going to be a thing right now. This one here at the start of the round, discard the top card of the behavior deck. If that card has claw, players in the front sector suffer damage. Unfortunately, both of our characters ran to that front section. So here's hoping the claw keyword is not there. It is not. We are safe. Very lucky. Now we have a challenge-specific start of round effect, and that is based on the round track, which is currently on 2. Both players, or characters in this case, are going to be discarding 2 cards off the top of each of their decks. So from Hellerin here, we're losing Hail of Bullets, and we're losing Tactical Reload. Kara is losing Overture and Shadow Strike. Start of round effects are all done. The next thing we can do is choose to consume 1 potion each if we wish. I'm going to choose not to consume anything for potions. Unfortunately, though, behavior refresh time, I discarded the lowest numbered card in the row there, which brought us out another front sector activation for when a player begins their turn. That's not going to be good. Unfortunately, now the monster also gains 2 struggle, putting it to 6, which means for 2 characters at 3 struggle apiece, that is going to force an unleash, meaning we're going to get damage for both characters 1 apiece, and the struggle is going to reset back to 1 struggle per character. So we currently have 4 damage on Hellerin, and we have 2 damage on Kara. the aggro tokens with Kara, so she gets the first player token, and we'll start things off. We'll trigger her Crystal Helm and Crystal Armor start abilities just to see whether we can get anything out of them. We do not. We do not have 3 of a kind color-wise, and we can look at the top 2 cards of her deck here just to see what she has coming. She's got a Crescent Strike. That's a pretty good one, and a free attack if we can chain it to a red one, plus being able to increase the sequence size, which is nice. This one's Run Through, another immediately over on the monster. These are all great for, well, I should say this one's great for actually charging up the Voltage card. But again, we have to get these out of the deck first. Unfortunately, before anything else goes on in terms of movement and playing action cards, during the start of turn effects, we have some behavior cards they're going to be triggering. We have 2 of them. We got Ember Dash, this one telling us we need to use green dodge cards in order to pay for stamina. Next up, we have Flaming Tails to trigger. This one says each player in the rear sector must immediately move or suffer damage, where X is the number of counters on Kharja. This is great because nobody's in the rear sector, so nothing happening. But the behavior cards that have just shown up are not great and will likely have some more triggers going on real soon. So based on the nasty behavior card, we'll go ahead and discard this dodge green card in order to get some movement going. She's going to move to the flank, and we're going to try to put some damage on this monster. After moving, we have an immediate trigger happening right in the center. We got Firepaw discarding the top card of the behavior deck. If the card has Claw, the active player suffers damage and becomes threatened. Here's hoping we do not see the Claw keyword. And we do. Unfortunately, I'm threatened and I take a damage. And unfortunately, the enhancement cost at the bottom can be paid on the struggle tokens it has, so it's going to remove 1 struggle, and it's going to allow it to bump it up to 2 damage. That's certainly not good. We have 4 damage on both of our characters now. We might need to think about those potions. Now we have 11 health with one and 10 with the other. Let's start things off with a Shadow Step here. That's going to allow me to do some movement. It costs 1 to do it, so I'm going to discard this card here for stamina in order to pay for it. It gives me a defense or dodge against the attrition check. Reclaim's not going to trigger right now. It says you may immediately move without paying any stamina cost. She's going to move to the rear sector of the monster, and we're going to take a look at her hand again, and we might actually make an attack here, although I'm a little scared because I know in the behavior for the monster right now, an attack and a rampage is in there, which is not good, but I think we still probably want to do this because of what I got comboed up here. So let's go ahead and place, let me think about this. Yeah, let's do Lightning Strike. This one should be interesting. It says if the top, well, once you place it in here, we're paying the 1 stamina to place it in the sequence, which is going to be this one right here. It's going to be discarded. It's a red card. I'm doing that on purpose because this card states if the top card of your discard pile is red, you may play that card in your sequence without paying its stamina cost. So I don't have any more cards to pay for another attack after this, but I can actually pull it off by pulling this out of the discard thanks to this ability. But first, let's do the 3 damage from that Lightning Strike. It's certainly not a massive hit, but now we have 4 damage. We're going to be triggering this, and then after that, the Rampage card. It states that Kharja becomes vulnerable. That's good. We'll place a token on in a minute, and the active player suffers damage plus X, where there's the number of counters again. We don't have counters on this creature at the moment, so nothing being bolstered. It would just be the regular amount of damage coming at us. The creature is vulnerable, and Kira now has 5 damage on her. Lots going on here. Rampage is going to trigger. We also had to replenish the deck in order to get this squared away. So that placed another struggle token on just for replenishing the deck. Then this Rampage says it's going to gain struggle, 2 more struggle, again, for the 2 characters that we have. And because we're in stance number 1, it says place a damage token in the front sector, which is going to be a sector that doesn't have one already. All right, so our board is all squared away. All the behavior cards have been resolved. We got a whole bunch of struggle that has been accumulating over there, which is not good, heading towards an unleash. All right, it's going to be wild. We're going to go ahead and use this ability on the card for the Lightning Strike now in order to get Echoing Blades from the discard pile into the sequence for free, not paying any stamina for it, allowing us to do an attack. But before that, it says here if we've got a card before this and we place this card here, which we can trigger this effect saying to draw 2 and then discard a card from our hand. We ended up getting Crescent Strike and Run Through. I decided to discard Run Through and hold on to the red card for future use. It's worth mentioning here that the Echo Blades, when it goes into my sequence, is now 2 of these symbols in a row, which means down here we get the additional 3 bonus damage on top of the 3 that comes from the Voltage card right here. Lots going on right now. We have the vulnerable token, and we're putting a decent amount of damage on, so I'm going to double it and make it a 12 damage attack. We cash in for a wound. We still have 6 damage left. We're working our way up towards another wound to get to 5. But first, the stance has been reached for number 1, so we have to change things out. All right, so we have some changes to deal with. So first off, the toughness has gone up. So now it's going to be 14 damage necessary to get wounds on this thing, even tougher. Then it says when revealed, place a fire terrain in each damaged sector on the board. That's going to really light things up. So a fire token that already exists inside of a sector is going to go from yellow to red. So we have red fire in all 3 of the damaged sectors on the game board. It's worth mentioning if one of my characters happened to be in this sector right here, when fire had to be placed here, when it already existed in yellow, when it flips over to its red side as it just did, if we were in here, we would suffer burning. The peril card tells us in stance 2, this monster is immune to blind, which currently hasn't been an issue yet because I'm not actually using blind as a tactic as of this point in time. It says when Kharja suffers a wound, you place a counter on it. So now you can see how those counters will actually come into play based on the behavior cards. Before they didn't have any effect, but now those are going to have an effect. Then when a player suffers attrition damage, that player suffers 1 additional damage for each counter on the monster. So that's definitely going to be bad. And if that wasn't bad enough, we have a behavior card triggering because we have 2 red cards, or it could be even 2 blue, or a red and a blue, those 2 symbols side by side in a sequence. It's called Hellfire, so it's very thematic for what's going on right now. It says the active player suffers damage unless they reveal a yellow from their hand. Down below, the enhancement it goes ahead and spends it for sure because it has 4 struggle. The active player suffers damage unless they discard a yellow from their hand. So things will be even tougher. So 1 struggle coming away from the monster, leaving it with 3. And unfortunately, the only card in my hand is a red one, so that is an additional damage going on Kara. Last but not least, I'm going to play this card into my sequence using the chain because there's a red card before it. Now we have 3 of these in a row, but unfortunately no bonus as we have to get up to 4 in a row to get to 5 additional damage. But this card by itself will be 3 damage. Allows me to increase my sequence limit, but that's not really going to help me. Aggro token gets pulled, but it's already here. At least 3 damage on the enemy, so that's not bad. So a total of 9 damage and no behavior triggers at the moment. We're now going to jump to the attrition check, and we're going to hope for a 1 here because I don't want to see any damage coming my way. We got a 2, which is more than what I currently have, so we're taking a swipe. Kara currently has 7 damage, and Hellerin has 4. We might be needing to use those potions in the future, especially for Kara. And if that wasn't bad enough, we also suffer fatigue damage while trying to draw up a new hand of 5 cards. I only was able to get 3 in hand. We're going to have to reshuffle the deck, draw 2 more. So after taking our additional damage, we're now at a total of 8 for her. Here's what I've drawn up, total 5 cards. We got Echoing Blades, we got Backstab, we have Crossover, Deny, and Perfection. The monster's going to swing around facing the aggro character. Hellerin's turn is now up, and at this point, I'm lucky because the monster is facing away from where I'm currently situated, which means this behavior card will not be triggering. There's no start of turn effects here that I need to trigger for Hellerin at the moment. The question really is, with all the fire on the board currently, I don't have the ability to easily get to a sector where I can actually do attacks because the fire is preventing me from placing cards into my sequence. This will be a quick turn. I'm just discarding this card in order to get stamina to move. And that's all I'm choosing to do. I'm going to end my turn right there. We have 3 cards in hand, so we're going to gain a stamina token. The movement's going to trigger this behavior card right here. This is Firepaw. We're going to discard the top card of the deck. If it has the claw keyword, bad things are going to happen to me. Let's see. It does have the claw keyword, and it has the enhancement and ability to spend. It has 3 struggle. It's going to spend 1 in order to make this 2, and that's going to allow it to do additional damage. Now it's doing 2 damage instead of 1 towards me. This is a pretty rough round for Hellerin because she's now currently at 6 damage. My other character, Kara, has 8 damage, so we are getting up there. We're doing an attrition check now, and the brutal thing is because we weren't able to place anything into our sequence currently, we have nothing to block whatever's coming at us right now, which means, well, pain is coming our way. We got ourselves a 0. Never mind, we are A-okay. We have nothing in terms of defense. That was literally the perfect time to get that card. I've currently got 2 red attack cards and 1 green dodge card. We're going to draw 2 cards up in order to replenish the hand here. We got Repositioning, a blue maneuver card, and we got Negation, a red card. We got lots of red. 3 red with Hellerin for the future. The monster's already pointed towards the aggro player. Nothing changing there. And we're moving on to round number 3. Start of round triggers have gotten lighter for stance 2 and for the peril card, but we still have the one for the challenge itself, removing a number of cards from our deck based on the round number, which is 3. So over here for Hellerin, we're going to lose the top card off the deck here. First one is Quick Reload going in the discard pile. Next one off the deck is going to be Ranged. And finally, for the third one, for the third round, Pressing Shot. On the other side for Kara, we're going to draw 3 cards and discard each of them. First one off the top is Swing. Next one is Run Through. Next one after that is Dancing. As much as I don't want to do this because it will take away points if I happen to get a victory, I'm going to use the health potion here on Hellerin as well as Kara, which will allow me, because it was a 0 on the attrition discard pile right now, if it's a 0 or a 1, this potion gives me 4 healing. So now just 2 damage on Hellerin, and for Kara, only 4. Now for the behavior refresh, which is going to take this one, number 1 out of the 3. Yes, a slip on my part. I forgot to trigger the end of round 1 here, which won't have any gameplay impact whatsoever on anything that has to do with the cards and what I'm doing right now, but we do have to trigger this one. The one that I just discarded was by far the lowest one in the equation, so nothing else would have changed. This one says each player in front and flank sectors suffers damage unless they reveal a yellow card from their hand. And it's going to be even nastier because it's going to go ahead and use the enhancement to make it even worse. We have to reveal 2 yellow cards now. The thing is, I don't currently have that with Hellerin. I don't have it. Actually, I might have it with Kara. I have 1 yellow. Actually, I do. I have 2 with Kara, so she's going to be fine. But Hellerin's going to take 1 damage. So apologies for missing that. So now Hellerin has 2 damage, Kara has 4 damage, and just so you understand where we're at with things, if we take a look, this one was the one that was in this position. So as of right now, the behavior refresh would still target this one, bringing this card into the fray. And unfortunately, now we've got 3 front sector cards in here, which is going to be really bad news for Kara. 2 more struggle for the monster, which is going to bring it up to a total of 3. The first player token is going to stay with Kara because she still has the aggro token, so she starts things off. She starts in the front sector of the monster, which is horrible, and she's going to trigger 3 behavior cards. It looks like Kharja's got all kinds of fun coming Kara's way. On the right-hand side, we got Ember Dash. This is the one that messes with our movement. After resolving that card, had to replenish the behavior deck, so that's an additional struggle for escalation. Now we're going to go ahead and resolve this one. Kharja is now going to go ahead and gain 2 more struggle tokens, which is going to bring it up to a total of 6, which means it's throwing its unleash at us. There's currently 4 struggle here, 2 more being added is 6. We're going to go ahead and reduce that back down to 2, and the unleash happens. Both of us are going to take damage here. Hellerin's taking 1, and Kara's taking 1 as well. Now taking a look over here, do we have anything that will trigger from this? No. The active player is now going to skip their turn unless another player discards a maneuver or attack card from their hand. And if the active player is the only player standing, well, that's not the case. So basically, can we do this? I'm going to discard Cannonball from Hellerin to allow Kara to still have her turn. Last but not least, we have Flaming Tails. It says each player in the rear sector must either immediately move or suffer damage, but this is not going to matter because nobody's in the rear section, thank goodness. Talk about a wild series of events. Kara is now ready to decide whether she wants to move. Now, one thing that I forgot to do at the end of the round is to flip over each of the fire tokens in each of the sectors. No gameplay impact to this right now, but certainly would have had an impact if I hadn't caught it. So eventually the opportunity to go after this monster will be there, but as of right now, it's probably better to be defensive in this situation. She has start of turn abilities here for Crystal Helm and Armor. The Crystal Armor one's not going to trigger for having 3 of the same color, but the Crystal Helm, we can take a look to see what cards are coming down the pipes here. We have a Divert, and we have another with 2 yellow dodge cards, a Natural Agility. We've got to put them back in the exact same spots they were. Now, I have no green cards in hand, so I have no way to generate any kind of movement that will allow me to get into a position where I can make an attack. So I'm basically going to sit still where I am, which means I'm taking the threatened token, which is not going to make the attrition test any better for me. But I will go ahead and start putting some cards in here defensively. In order to pay for perfection, I'm going to use this card here, discarding it for its stamina to pay for the 1 cost. This will give me a nice little defense against the attrition check later on, which is going to be nasty based on the threatened token. We can take advantage of this if we want. We can draw 1. If the cards are red, you may play it as the next card in your sequence without paying its stamina cost. Again, that's not really going to probably have much benefit because I cannot make an attack from the front sector at all. So I'm going to go ahead, and it says you may play. So I'm going to take it anyway because I know it's not going to be red, and we'll just place it in my hand. Now, this is a tough call. I'm not sure which way to go, but I'm going to play another card into my sequence. This one is going to be another yellow, and it's cost nothing stamina-wise, but here's the weird thing. I could keep this in my hand in order to play it as a reactionary thing when I draw my 2 attrition cards, thanks to being threatened, and use this to basically reveal another one instead. Or I can play it in my sequence for free like I just did in order to bolster how much defense I have overall, hoping that the 2 cards I pull don't go over 2. I'm ending my turn right there, and so because I have 2 cards or more in hand still, I get a stamina token. It's now time to check to see whether the attrition deck is going to be kind to me or not. Let's find out. The first one is a 1, so that is good. But we got to take the worst of the 2 because we have to draw 2 for being threatened. And we got a 2, so we're taking this result, but we have 2 in our sequence defensively to be able to dodge it, so no damage. Sequence gets all cleaned up, and we have 3 cards in hand, so we're drawing 2 to replenish our hand. We got ourselves natural agility, and we have the finesse card. Monster isn't changing its orientation because it's still looking at the aggro character, which is Kharja. We're going to take this round slow in order to wait for the fire to die down so we can get back in position and start unloading with a lot of red cards. That's my hope. We're going to go ahead and play long range to get some defense in here. I'm not going to worry about this. It says the next red card you play gains stealth, but I'm not going to worry about that. We're going to be paying for this with this fire cascade card, so discarding this one for the 1 to get it in there to give me some defense. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but you can see for the Thunder Helm here, it says when you discard a red card from your hand to generate stamina, which I just did, you can deal a damage. You got to take advantage of everything you have in order to try to take this monster down, so we're going to go up to 10 total damage on the monster. Let's go ahead and do our attrition check and hope for a 1 or a 0. That's kind of what I'm aiming for here. We got ourselves a 1. We have enough to defend against it, so no damage coming through. I'm ending off my turn right here, so we're going to go ahead and flip this stamina token over to the opposite side. We have 2 stamina saved up now. We're going to draw up 3 more cards. I unfortunately only had 2 more in my deck, so we're going to go ahead and replenish the deck. The deck's been replenished, and we also took 1 point of fatigue damage, bringing us to 5 damage on this character. The monster's not going to turn to face anybody else because it's already facing the aggro character. We do have 1 behavior card that's triggering. It's the end of round 1, and this one says threatened players, which unfortunately is Kharja, is going to suffer damage, which will be 1 plus X, where X is the number of counters. We don't have any counters on there yet, so just 1 damage, but that's bad enough. So 6 total damage on Kharja and 5 on Hellerin. The past round was not that exciting, but what will be exciting is the fact that all the fire currently on the game board is disappearing. And that opens up the opportunity for us to start moving around and making some attacks. We're going into round number 4. The Primal Challenge special rule is going to trigger right now. We're in round 4, so we're discarding 4 cards from the top of both character decks. We are losing for Hellerin, Recharging, Prompt Answer, Swift Deflection, and Cycle of Bullets. Over here for Kharja, we're losing Shadow Strike, Crescent Strike, Piercing Strike, that's not good, and Cut Through. One correction to make, no gameplay impact, is that this stamina token with 2 on it should remain as 1. You can only keep the 1 stamina side unless you have some game effect or card that allows you to bump that up. Time for a behavior refresh, so because there are 2 cards with number 1 on it, both of them get discarded and replenished. The monster also gains struggle, so we're going up to 4. Kara's going to be starting this round off. She has the first player token because she has the aggro token. She's going to choose to make use of her abilities here to take a look at the top 2 cards of her deck. She got Lightning Strike, and she has Shadow Step. We'll place those back, so at least we know exactly what they are. And do we have 3 of a kind in here? We do not. Very close, though. I'm going to spend my stamina token to get her up here in the north sector, mainly because it will draw the attention of this monster later towards her, hopefully, and that will leave the rear position open for Hellerin. We'll start things off by placing natural agility in here. This is going to give me 1 defense, cost me 1 stamina, so I'll discard this card here in order to do that. This is going to increase my sequence limit and allows me to draw once I put a red card here beside this one. For instance, it'll trigger that ability, so let's potentially do that. The other thing to mention is I got rid of the threatened token that was here because I moved. I'm actually going to take that back. Instead of discarding this one, I'm going to play this one instead because it guarantees me a draw 1 right away. And the reason for this is I want to see what that card is to see what I can plan for the future. So we're going to grab it. We already know because we took a look, but it's going to be Lightning Strike. Let's get Echoing Blades into the sequence. It's going to cost 1 stamina, so I'll use Lightning Strike here for its stamina in order to discard this down here. And it's going to allow me to draw 2 cards, then discard a card from our hand. Then we can go ahead with an attack. I got 2 decent cards out of my hand here, Returning Blade and Shadow Step. I'm going to hold on to Returning Blade. It's a free one to play. We'll place this one in the discard pile. We'll throw 3 damage at the enemy, which is 1 away from being able to put a wound on it. I'm going to play this card into my sequence. It is free. It's called Returning Blade. This is going to allow me to do another attack. Based on the Battle Dance chart for this character, we get a bonus of 3 damage because we have 2 of these symbols in a row. So that's going to be a total of 3 damage plus the 3 from the voltage. That's going to be 6 damage. We currently have 13, so 6 more is going to be 19. We'll remove 14, and then we're going to have 5 left over. We're also going to trigger this card after we're done resolving things. Another wound on the enemy. We're down to half its health. We're going to go ahead and trigger this one right here. Now I've got an interesting timing thing going on here because this one that just got flipped over is called Hellfire. The active player suffers damage unless they reveal a yellow card from their hand, and they're going to go ahead and of course try and enhance this to make it worse. The active player suffers damage unless they discard a yellow card from their hand. So that's where it's tough because I had a card in my hand that I was going to use for its actual ability that says when a behavior card is revealed, you may discard this card from your hand to immediately overrun the monster, which would have actually gotten me my mastery and would have actually provided me with the opportunity to put some more damage on the enemy. But I'm gonna have to discard the yellow card now in order to avoid taking the 1 damage swipe. We managed to get through that one unscathed, but the Rampage card is going to trigger Rising Temperature. Says the monster is going to gain struggle based on the number of characters, so 2, which is very close to its Unleash, and then only in stance 1 it will do the bottom portion, where in stance 2 we can ignore that. The bad news is that escalation is going to occur because we ran out of cards in this deck over here. We had to shuffle the discard pile to renew it. When we do, we place a struggle token here, hitting 6, and the Unleash is going to trigger. Unleash occurs, both my characters taking an additional damage, so Hellerin is now at 6, and Kara is now at 7. Based on the Peril card for stance 2, every time a wound hits Kharja, Kharja is going to have a counter token placed on it, which is going to have negative repercussions for us as we go forward, so we got our first one. We're now going to check for attrition, and we only have 1 defense in our sequence currently. Let's see how we do in terms of dodge. Oof, the attrition ends up being 2 with 1 dodge. It's not enough. We're taking damage, and even worse, the Peril card says when we take attrition damage, that player suffers an additional damage for each counter, so unfortunately it's going to be 2 damage to us. And that's very bad news for us because we currently have a total of 9 damage, 1 more, and we are KO'd, which is not good. And here we go. We're going to be drawing up as a sequence. Gets discarded. We only have 2 cards in hand, so we draw both of them. We got ourselves Twist and Overture, but we now need to replenish, and from Fatigue, we take a damage, knocking us out. Just before we talk about the KO situation, let's draw up the 2 last cards we need to replenish our hand. We got ourselves Divert, and we have Swing. So what happens when you get KO'd? Well, your turn immediately ends. You're going to remove all the damage tokens and any other tokens from your hunter board. If you have the aggro token, you pass it over to the first player. If that player is KO'd, you pass it on to the next player and continue onwards. So in this case, I only have 1. It's going over. Your entire hand of cards gets discarded, and anything you might have in a sequence at the point you get KO'd. In my case, I just had a hand of cards. They're all in this card now. We add a wound card to the discard pile and then reshuffle the discard pile into our deck. I've got the wound card that matches the back of the deck of the character I'm using. We're now going to shuffle this entire discard into the deck. Now I had to choose whether I wanted to deplete my armor or my helm card, and I placed a deplete token on the helm. For those that don't know, the health points of depleted equipment do not count towards your health value any longer. If both your armor and your helm cards get depleted, you are out of the game until the end of the scenario. As you're KO'd, your miniature is also knocked over to its side. This knockout is going to have an impact on the points I can score if I successfully beat this beast in the challenge. Now find the KO token and place it on the board, and you're going to place it on its red side. The monster is now going to spin towards the aggro character, which certainly isn't a good thing for Hellerin. Now, if both of our characters get KO'd, in other words, they're both knocked down, then we lose the scenario. So we're trying to avoid that at all costs. Now, I'm already going to take a penalty for having one of my characters KO'd when I do the point scoring for this challenge. But it's worth mentioning what will happen the next time it comes around to Kara's turn is that the red KO token will flip to its black side. The turn will be lost. It'll go back over to Hellerin. And then eventually when it comes back around to Kara again, she'll be able to remove the token completely and stand back up and get going. And that's going to wrap up part number 1 of the Primal Challenge, number 1 against Kharja. Started out pretty good. We got a number of wounds. We were going pretty well there for a while. And then all of a sudden, Kharja turned around and started doling out damage and KO'd one of our characters. Join me in the next video as we dive into the finale to see whether my characters can still pull out a victory while things begin to heat up as we continue through gameplay. Let myself and the community know in the comments down below how well you did at this Primal Challenge. Let us know your original setup and then let us know your scores for this one. We'll be really interested to see how well people did. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.